do you know about Foolio? Let's start from there. I think he's a piece of shit.
Newly released footage has completely shifted the direction of Theo's murder case. One of the suspects was caught on camera during a federal interrogation, not just talking, but actually reenacting the entire crime. This shocking development is being seen as a clear-cut confession, and it's sending shockwaves through the investigation.
He starts walking around the interview room, and then he starts going, and then he walks around, and then he does it again.
But here's the twist. He wasn't the only one speaking to the feds. I've got the full breakdown, so let's dive into what really went down. After Foolio's murder, it became clear that in 2024, if the feds are on your trail, there's no safe place to hide. The way these individuals were taken down revealed just how entangled they were in the case. On July 27, 2024, in Jacksonville, authorities arrested Sean Gathright, Isaiah Chance, and Alicia Andrews. But what had the streets buzzing wasn't just who got picked up, it was how they got picked up. Body cam footage from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office looked more like a tactical raid than standard arrests. Officers moved with precision, like they were dismantling a dangerous operation, not just rounding up small-time suspects. Then came Rashad Murphy's arrest on July 30th, and it was straight out of a movie. The entire Collins Preserve Apartments complex was locked down. SWAT teams, gang task forces, the whole area was surrounded like they were taking down a cartel boss. After hours of tense negotiation, Murphy finally surrendered with his hands in the air. In that moment, it was obvious, this wasn't just neighborhood beef. This was the kind of situation that screams federal charges were coming. At the top of Jacksonville's most wanted list stood Davian Murphy, a man who managed to stay completely off the radar for over 6 months. But eventually, the streets caught up with him. Murphy was finally taken into custody at an apartment on Label Street, with help from JSO's gang unit and the U.S. Marshals Service. His run was over. But what happened next inside that interrogation room? That's where things went off the rails. Let me paint the picture. Detectives step out, giving him space to reflect, maybe even cool down. But instead of staying silent like someone who's been through the game before, Murphy took a very different route. What he did next wasn't just reckless, it was theatrical. According to courtroom testimony, the detective described Murphy's actions like something straight out of a horror film. It wasn't a confession, it was a performance. One that might haunt his defense team for a long time.
He puts out his arms like this, and it appears that he's brandishing a rifle with one hand extended and one, what I would consider the trigger finger. He starts walking around the interview room after he gets out of his seat, and this is after Detective Nieder and I left, and he's holding it like this in front of him, and then he starts going, and then he walks around, and then he does it again, and he does it multiple times.
Murphy really thought he was alone in that room, acting out the whole scene like he was bragging to his crew back on the block. But here's the thing, those interrogation rooms are never private. Every move, every word, every gesture, caught on camera. And now, prosecutors have him on video practically giving a full confession. In the streets, we call that telling on yourself, and Murphy did it with more detail than any informant ever could. What followed in court exposed just how serious this gang war really is. On October 7, 2024, Florida State Attorney Susan S. Lopez filed a motion to pursue the death penalty against Isaiah Chance, Sean Gathright, and Rashad Murphy. But noticeably missing from that list? Alicia Andrews. When prosecutors bring up the death penalty, it's not just legal pressure, it's a message. A warning to anyone living that street life: if you stay on this path, there's only one destination, the lethal injection table. But Andrews' exclusion from that motion raised eyebrows everywhere. Word on the block? She was pregnant when arrested, with her due date set for February 2025. Her trial, which was originally scheduled for January 6th, got pushed back to August 18th, 2025, after she waived her right to a speedy trial. In the streets, when someone gets that kind of special treatment, there's usually one reason: they're cooperating with the feds.
He said Alicia Andrews, who's the girl who's pregnant, she asked for a speedy trial, but the other three waived.
Right.
Waived that. So yeah, I guess that means she's cooperating. Now, she was at the party, and there's a video of her.
But beyond Alicia and Davienne, the word on the street was clear. The rest had been folding under pressure since day one.
One of the guys when they were arresting him, I guess he had a gun to his head. Did you hear this whole story?
Yeah, they said he was suicidal, and he started talking about he wanted to bring a Bible with him or some. These are all signs that things are gonna go very bad for them.
When someone in the street starts talking about bringing Bibles to jail and showing signs of breaking down, that's a dead giveaway. They're not built for the pressure. Real ones take their losses in silence. But these young guys, they weren't ready for the weight that comes with a federal indictment. This case wasn't your typical street beef. It escalated because federal agencies got involved. Tampa Police Chief Lee Burkaw confirmed the FBI, ATF, and other federal partners were deep in the investigation. And when the feds, the alphabet boys, step in, they're not just trying to solve one murder. They're coming to dismantle entire networks and send a message citywide. Inside the courtroom, the gang drama kept unfolding like a real-life street saga. Investigators revealed the killing was tied to a long-standing war between Foolio's 6 Block, KTA, crew and rival sets, including ATK's top hitters and the 1200 gang. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was a decade-long conflict that had already left a trail of bodies in Jacksonville's deadliest neighborhoods. It got personal, too. Detectives testified that Rashad Murphy's cousin, Joe Rod Adams, was murdered back in 2018, and that incident was name-dropped in Foolio's music. Murphy reportedly carried deep resentment for that, and in the hood, when someone disrespects your fallen homies in a song, it's seen as the ultimate offense, one that demands retaliation. Even with the death penalty on the table, some of these guys still couldn't accept reality. In May 2025, Isaiah Chance posted on Instagram claiming the cops had the wrong people, saying there was no shell casings, no footage of the suspects leaving the scene. But anyone following this case knows that's straight-up denial. The evidence was airtight. The tech used to track these suspects was straight sci-fi: surveillance cameras, license plate readers, phone data. Every text, every location ping, every online post, it all connected the dots. These dudes didn't just get caught, they walked themselves into it with every digital move. Now, let's rewind. Because to understand how this whole thing spiraled, we have to go back to where it all started, June 23, 2024. A day that's now locked into Jacksonville history. The day Charles Jones, better known as Julio Foolio, was supposed to be celebrating his birthday. Instead, he was hunted down by cold-blooded killers who thought they had the perfect plan. But this wasn't just another drill rapper getting caught slipping. This was a full-blown federal operation where high-tech surveillance turned every one of these so-called hitmen's moves against them. See, to really grasp how deep this goes, you have to understand the streets of Jacksonville. This city's been a battlefield for years, with over 100 active gangs and deep-rooted poverty fueling a culture where the streets offer more security than the system. Foolio wasn't just rapping about the life, he was living it. Representing 6 Block Hard, also known as KTA, Kill Them All, he'd been at war with ATK and 1200 for over a decade. And this wasn't just about turf. This was personal. The war between KTA and ATK/1200 claimed lives on both sides, real bodies, not just diss tracks. This wasn't rap beef that stayed in the booth, the streets were bleeding, and the city was keeping score. Foolio's mom, Sandra Mays, had seen the writing on the wall. She'd been hit with 8 bullets in a related shooting. She begged her son to get out before it was too late. But Foolio refused to leave the streets behind, choosing to keep his music real, no matter the risk. The night it all went down was supposed to be all love and celebration. Foolio had been active on Instagram, posting about his birthday pool party at an Airbnb and later events at clubs in Tampa. What he didn't realize, his enemies were watching his every story, every post, every tagged location. They weren't just lurking, they were plotting. And when they moved with deadly precision.
So they knew everywhere she was at. They knew when they were at the B&B. They knew when they got to Tampa.
The level of tracking these suspects were doing, it was next level, almost demonic. No exaggeration. According to both Street Intel and law enforcement, Isaiah Chance and Alicia Andrews were seen on surveillance footage tailing Foolio, with Chance using his phone to stay in constant contact with Sean Gathright, who was in a second vehicle. This wasn't some random, heat-of-the-moment retaliation. This was a coordinated, military-style mission, complete with scouts, shooters, and real-time communication. Everybody had a role, and they played it like a unit. They drove nearly 3 hours from Jacksonville to Tampa, using 2 separate cars, a silver Chevy Cruze and a Chevy Impala. They booked an Airbnb to stay low, mapped out their movements, and carefully tracked Foolio's every step. Meanwhile, Foolio was just out here enjoying his birthday, completely unaware that a kill squad was lurking in the shadows, moving silently, patiently, and ready to strike.
You really think y'all gonna get away with it, huh?
Bro, they have the home surveillance video of one of the shooters where he's packing his car with the
But
guns.
here's where these so-called criminals completely fumbled. They left more evidence behind than a full season of CSI. One suspect was caught on a home surveillance cam loading up his car with firearms. Investigators later found bullets at his house, one of the murder weapons, and shell casings that matched rounds from the crime scene. These guys thought they were being slick, but their execution was anything but clean. The night of June 22nd rolling into the early hours of the 23rd, Foolio was living it up in Tampa, partying, posting, sharing his location in real time, and enjoying his birthday with the squad. After police shut down the Airbnb celebration, he moved to the Holiday Inn and Home 2 suites. That last-minute switch was supposed to be a safety call, but instead, it gave his killers the opportunity they needed to strike. At around 4:38 a.m., just as Foolio and his crew were getting ready to head out, the attackers made their move. Surveillance cameras at the hotel captured crucial moments of the ambush: 3 masked gunmen dressed in black, armed with 2 semi-automatic rifles and a pistol. The hit was quick and merciless. Over 30 shots were fired, not just from a basic handgun, but from 2 AR-style rifles outfitted with brass catchers. Now that detail right there says it all. Brass catchers, those devices that prevent shell casings from hitting the ground, are used when you know the heat is coming and you're trying to leave 0 ballistic evidence. This wasn't a bunch of reckless kids with stolen guns. These were individuals who came prepared, calculated, and trained for destruction. Straight up savage execution.
Driver! Open the car door! Let me see your hands! Step on out! Step on out! Look away! Back up to the sound of my voice! Yep. Stop right there. Lift your shirt up.
But what these killers didn't see coming was the level of firepower that was about to rain down on them. They really thought they pulled off the perfect hit, but they severely miscalculated what happens when you take out someone like Foolio. This wasn't going to be just another unsolved murder buried in a cold case file. Not this time. The moment Foolio was pronounced dead, this case became high priority, and it wasn't just local law enforcement on the job. The federal government was already circling. And once the alphabet agencies step in, FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals, the rules change completely. It's no longer a street beef, it becomes a federal takedown. And nobody outruns that kind of heat.
Well, it's not like they're gonna get off for this.
No, they got so much evidence against them. Like, when you go through it, you can pretty much just, all right, pick a prison. Where do y'all want to go?
The amount of evidence these suspects left behind? Absolutely insane. One law enforcement official even joked, there was so much dirt on these guys, the only question left was which prison to send them to. But gathering that kind of evidence, analyzing it, connecting the dots, and building a case that would actually hold up in court takes serious firepower. And that's where the feds came in. Tampa Police Chief Lee Burkaw confirmed that this wasn't just a local investigation anymore. The FBI, ATF, and other federal partners were now in full control. This had evolved into a federal case involving interstate criminal activity, illegal weapons trafficking, and a level of digital forensics that most street crews can't even comprehend. These suspects really believed their ski masks, brass catchers, and carefully timed escape plan would cover their tracks. But they couldn't have been more wrong. Because in 2024, the idea of a perfect crime is a myth. Every phone ping, every license plate scan, every Cash App or DM, it all leaves a digital trail. And when the feds start tracking that trail, it's only a matter of time before your past catches up to you.
They found bullets. They found bullets in that kid's house. They found one of the murder weapons. They found bullets matching from the shooting scene. This kid kept collectibles from the case, like mad inside of his house.
What's truly wild is that one of these suspects was actually holding on to souvenirs from the murder, like he was building a personal trophy case of his own downfall. Investigators recovered bullets and firearms from his home, the very same evidence that would later be used to bury him in court. But this story isn't just about solving a high-profile murder. It's about the evolution of law enforcement in the digital age, where federal agencies now have access to tools that would have sounded like pure science fiction just a few years ago. These suspects thought they were pulling off some Ocean's 11 level heist. But in reality, they were using street-level tactics in a world now dominated by satellite surveillance, digital forensics, and interagency coordination. They brought knives to a drone strike. What followed was a full-blown masterclass in modern policing, blending old-school detective work with cutting-edge technology. The FBI, ATF, and local law enforcement worked together in lockstep, and the suspects never even saw it coming. Call it what it is, digital snitching. The most shocking part of this entire saga isn't just the violence, it's how the killer's own attempts to be calculated and low-key became the exact evidence that sealed their fate. Every digital move they made, from texts and DMs to GPS data and surveillance hits, told investigators the entire story, piece by piece. In today's world, every action leaves a footprint. And these suspects just learned that the hard way.
They drove 3 hours, 2 separate cars.
And they all got caught. Is there still 1% large?
Yes, Davion
The
Adams.
scale of this conspiracy was absolutely next level. 5 individuals made the 3-hour drive from Jacksonville to Tampa, coordinating across multiple vehicles and staying in constant contact through digital communication. They truly believed they were executing a flawless, calculated hit. But they were wrong on every level. The suspects were identified as Isaiah Chance, 21, Alicia Andrews, 21, Sean Gathright, 18, Rashad Murphy, 30, and Davian Murphy, 27. Each one of them had a clearly defined role in this operation. Andrews and Chance acted as the eyes on the ground, surveilling Foolio's every move and sending real-time updates to the rest of the crew. Meanwhile, Gathright and the Murphy brothers formed the execution team, armed with rifles and handguns, ready to carry out the hit. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment street beef. It was a full-blown operation with scouts, shooters, and a plan. But the problem? They underestimated law enforcement. And that miscalculation is exactly why they're now facing charges that could put them on death row.
Someone may even get the death penalty.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know what people be thinking, but if that case doesn't tell you that it's almost impossible. I mean, there's a popular series called How to Get Away with Murder.
The amount of digital evidence federal investigators uncovered was nothing short of staggering. It read like a detailed, step-by-step guide on how not to commit a crime in the digital age. Every text, call, app, and move these suspects made left behind a digital trail, and federal agencies had the tools to dissect it all with surgical precision. And the surveillance footage? That was just scratching the surface. Clips from places like Teasers and Truth 18 Lounge, where Foolio was spotted celebrating, showed suspects Isaiah Chance and Alicia Andrews actively tailing him. At Teasers, surveillance cameras clocked a Chevy Cruze pulling up at 2:23 a.m., registered to the suspects. Chance was seen using his phone in the moment, likely coordinating with the rest of the crew in real time. What these suspects failed to consider was just how advanced surveillance had become in 2024. Modern vehicles, especially Teslas, are basically mobile security systems equipped with multiple cameras recording in high definition around the clock. And that tech came back to bite them. Tesla surveillance captured critical angles of the shooting, clean, wide, detailed footage that wouldn't have even existed just a few years ago. This wasn't just a case built off witness statements. It was built off crystal clear digital receipts these suspects left behind every step of the way.
The guys walk in and out of the house, their own Ring camera. They subpoenaed the evidence. The guy who had the motive to do it, he thought he was being smart.
But maybe the most incriminating piece of evidence didn't come from police, bystanders, or surveillance footage at clubs. It came straight from the suspects themselves. One of them was actually caught on his own home security camera, loading firearms into a vehicle before the hit. That footage alone painted a clear picture of premeditation, and it came from a source he probably never even thought twice about. In 2024, Ring cameras and other home security systems are everywhere, so common that some of these guys forgot they were being recorded by their own equipment. They weren't just leaving a trail for investigators, they were practically building the case against themselves from the moment they left the house.
I don't want to get caught. I'm going to leave my phone at home. But he uses other people's phones, so their phones are there.
The suspects thought they were being slick, trying to avoid leaving a digital footprint. But their attempt to outsmart the system ended up blowing up in their faces. Isaiah Chance and Alicia Andrews were identified as the lookouts, shadowing Foolio across multiple locations throughout Tampa. In an effort to avoid detection, Chance used Andrews' phone to communicate with the rest of the crew, sending updates on Foolio's whereabouts in real time. But instead of hiding his tracks, all he did was create a digital trail on 2 devices instead of 1, doubling the evidence and giving investigators even more to work with.
The girl is already talking. The girl basically said, hey, I wasn't gonna use my phone here. I was just on the ride with my boyfriend.
Alicia Andrews admitted to being at the scene, but tried to downplay her involvement, claiming she was simply lost and unaware of any murder plot. But federal investigators weren't buying it, because her digital footprint told a completely different story. Every move she made that night was documented, and the data left behind made her claim of innocence look weak at best, and outright false at worst. One of the most damning pieces of evidence came from license plate reader systems placed across the city. These high-tech systems tracked both vehicles used in the operation, a Chevy Cruze and a Chevrolet Impala, as they followed Foolio throughout Tampa. To make things worse, one of the suspects had even used his mother's vehicle during the hit, linking the crime directly to his family and making it even easier for investigators to connect the dots.
His mama said, I ain't had that car, then my son had it. By the way, the guy who had the bullet fragments and the barrel connected to another the bullet cases and the barrel connected to another shooting. The crazy thing about him, he's 18 years old.
The ballistic evidence painted an even darker and more disturbing picture of the young men involved. Sean Gathright, just 18 years old, was directly linked to multiple shootings through shell casing analysis. The 9mm casings recovered from the Tampa murder scene matched shell casings from 2 previous incidents, a May 2024 homicide and an October 2023 shooting that investigators believe was a failed attempt on Foolio's life. It was a chilling discovery, one that showed this wasn't a one-time act of violence. This was a pattern. Even more heartbreaking was what investigators uncovered about Gathright's past. They found photos and details of his early childhood, innocent, normal, like any other kid growing up. Seeing how someone so young could evolve into a repeat shooter tied to multiple murders shook even hardened detectives. This case wasn't just about gang violence or digital evidence. It was also a tragic look at how lost some of these young lives had become before they even had a chance to live them.
What happened in 5 years? That this guy's a stone cold killer. He's connected to another homicide. This guy supposedly has done multiple shootings, apparently killed somebody in May or March.
The federal investigation revealed this wasn't just about a single murder. It was the unraveling of a cycle of escalating violence led by young individuals who became killers before they were even old enough to legally buy a drink. These weren't hardened veterans. These were kids, swallowed by the streets and transformed into something they likely never imagined they'd become. The sheer scope of the evidence opened the door to something much bigger than just this case. Federal agencies began exploring potential RICO charges, not just targeting the individuals involved in Foolio's death, but aiming to dismantle entire gang structures operating in Jacksonville. One of the most damaging parts of the investigation was the financial trail. Rashad Murphy used his personal Cash App account to rent the Airbnb in Tampa, a move that made it ridiculously easy for investigators to trace. Federal agents subpoenaed records from multiple financial platforms, building a crystal clear picture of how the entire conspiracy was funded and coordinated. But what truly sealed the case were the suspect's own digital communications. A search warrant into Sean Gathwright's iCloud revealed incriminating messages sent after the murder. One chilling message from a Murphy read, "I'm coming home. My thirst is quenched. Pop a bottle of Don Julio today." That wasn't just a confession. That was a celebration. A disrespectful taunt that weaponized Foolio's own stage name against him. In the streets, sipping Don Julio had become a known phrase used to mock him, and using it in the aftermath of his death showed not only guilt, but a complete lack of remorse. Even their attempts to cover their financial tracks failed miserably. When one of their cars broke down, another member covered expenses, adding even more digital transactions to the paper trail that led right back to them. Transportation evidence also played a major role. 3 of the suspects took an Uber back to Jacksonville. The driver was able to identify them, and Uber's detailed records, from GPS tracking to payment info and ride history, became yet another puzzle piece connecting them directly to the murder. The arrests that followed were dramatic and telling. Gathwright, Chance, and Andrews were picked up in Jacksonville, Chance and Andrews at a residence, Gathwright at a shopping center. Body cam footage from those arrests showed faces that knew the game was over. Rashad Murphy's arrest came after a full-blown standoff. SWAT and gang units surrounded his Jacksonville apartment complex, evaluating residents and negotiating with him for hours before he finally surrendered. The last to fall was Davian Murphy, who managed to stay on the run for over 6 months, but even that didn't save him. He was eventually found and arrested at a Jacksonville apartment with help from the U.S. Marshals and JSO's gang unit. No matter how far he ran, the federal resources chasing him made sure escape was never a real option. The legal hammer dropped hard. All 5 suspects were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and, for the shooters, attempted murder as well. Florida announced plans to pursue the death penalty against Chance, Gathwright, and Rashad Murphy, but not Alicia Andrews. That alone raised questions, suggesting she may be cooperating with prosecutors. This investigation didn't just uncover a murder. It exposed a much larger network of gang violence, online provocations, and revenge culture that's been fueling Jacksonville's bloodshed for years. These suspects operated with a street-level mentality, unaware that in 2024, law enforcement is playing a whole different game. Every text, every call, every dollar sent, every step taken, all of it becomes evidence in the hands of skilled federal investigators, and that's how airtight cases get built. The streets will always remember Julio Foolio, but they'll also remember how his killers got caught, not just by surveillance, but by turning on each other, and by leaving behind digital receipts they couldn't take back. Appreciate y'all for rocking with me. If you thought this case was wild, check out the other videos popping up on your screen. They're just as crazy. No cap. Catch you in the next one. Stay woke.